Click. Jay is currently away from keyboard. I can't remember his excuse.
I think he was at the beach. It's a long weekend here in the U.S. That's why.
How's this? We've got a long weekend next weekend. Hence why.
Why can't you have your long weekend when we're having our long weekend?
Because you guys don't have a queen, whereas we do.
Screw your monarchy.
Next weekend is the Queen's birthday weekend.
Ooh, it's the Queen's birthday.
But it's not.
Now we get our time off.
It's not the Queen's birthday, though.
Ooh, it's our Queen's birthday, except it's actually not.
I think it was like Queen Victoria's birthday, and then they moved it to be the first Monday of June.
I like how you're using the fact that's not actually her birthday as if it were like an excuse or like a meaningful defense of having the holiday.
No, it's just a weird fact about the Queen's birthday holiday for us. I'm not defending anything. I enjoy my day off. I'll take whatever excuse for it. Hell, because of everything that's going on, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days off work. I go back to work for a day, have the weekend, and then go to my new job the following Monday.
Fun.
Yeah, I ran out of leave, or else I would have taken that whole week off.
All right. Let's hold, and I'll do the intro, and we'll get started.
Oh, hurry up.
Hello and welcome to Low Volume Small Form Factor.net's podcast. My name is Joshua Ramirez, and today I'm joined by, sadly, only 2 of the 3 other J's. To my virtual left, we have James Schell. James, how you been doing?
Yeah, been doing good. Looking forward to the long weekend.
Yes, me as well. And then to my virtual right, we have John Morrison, way down below in the tiny speck of a country that is New Zealand that doesn't have a 3-day weekend because they're lame, unlike us cool Americans. How have you been doing, John?
Life's a hell of a lot better than it was, and our 3-day weekend's next weekend.
Yes, because it's your queen's birthday, except it's not.
And I'm pretty sure we have more 3-day weekends than you guys do.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'll give you that much. But we have our freedom.
So do we.
As you celebrate your queen's birthday on the day that isn't even her birthday. Anyway,
we have freedom. We're too far away from anywhere to be of strategic importance to anyone, so no one wants us.
I guess that's one way to go about securing that. In any case, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the news. We actually have a lot to talk about, as well as the build competition, so we're a bit tight for time. But really, just as the last episode kind of ended up being the GeForce GTX 1080 episode, for lack of a better way of putting it, I figure this episode's really going to become the power supply episode. Maybe not from one particular vendor, but we had a flurry not only of announcements and releases, but also reviews. From our end of things. Astute readers will notice that currently we have an excited Oprah Winfrey gracing the front page, and this was thanks to a post that I wrote about of an announcement from FSP. They're actually set to announce during Computex, or at least share more information during Computex, about what they're calling the Dagger line of SFX power supplies. So these particular units, although they're interesting in their own right, they're probably the least interesting, the ones we're going to talk about. But essentially, they just pushed out a very simple press release. We first saw, I think John first saw on Tech Power Up, and so I did a quick report on it. But it's basically a 500 watt and a 600 watt SFX unit. So you get the choice of either. They have kind of all the basics that you've sort of come to expect. So compliant with ATX v2.4, DC-DC switching. They're both 80 plus gold rated. Unfortunately, they both only have an 80 mil fan, which until recently was actually pretty typical, but we've seen some 92 mil fans from Silverstone and more recent units, which obviously are preferable just because you get the larger fan size, so theoretically the noise is a bit improved. But beyond that, this is really just sort of additional vendors providing additional options in what's very, very rapidly becoming a pretty darn crowded vertical of the market. And, you know, anyone who read this article, and we'll link to it in the show notes, the title I gave it was the SFX power supplies keep on coming. FSP set to launch 500 and 600 watt Dagger line. And that's because if you look at the two previous stories that we did, they actually were about other power supplies. We had finally a review of the SilverStone SX700-LPT, which is Silverstone's 700 watt SFXL power supply, and that review's been a long time coming. And then before that, I did a report on Lian Li stealth launching the PE750, which is their 750 watt SFXL power supply. Both of these units being platinum rated, by the way. So needless to say, all told, a lot of hardware has been coming out. A lot of power supplies have been coming out, many of which we've been waiting for some time. And this is all just happening before Computex even gets started. So we've seen FSP and I think one or two other vendors already pre-announced some stuff. Undoubtedly, there'll be more vendors announcing even more things actually during Computex. So in terms of like the overall state of the market, I mean, we could see a near doubling of what's going to be available and or announced in terms of power supplies from like a month before Computex to immediately after. That said, I think the most interesting of all of these things I've mentioned would have to definitely be the review that James posted of the SilverStone SX700-LPT. So James, I wanted to pass it along to you because you're the one that did the review. It was over 4,000 words long, I think.
Yes.
It was.
Yeah, lots of words.
Lots of words. It was an odyssey of a piece, but you did a really, really good job. Feedback on the forum was excellent, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so yeah, definitely been a long time coming. It was actually, it was first announced or revealed like just ahead of last Computex. So it's actually, as of today, it's been over like a year because it was first shown off May 27th last year. So yeah, definitely been a long time coming. I think it was actually initially slated to release that summer, but then it's been delayed and delayed and delayed, and it's finally here. So, yeah, it was really cool. So Tony, because I've been talking with Tony at Silverstone, he's their like product manager for this unit for a while, and so he airshipped me one directly from China, from the China office, since they had stock of it already. So I didn't have to wait for the American office to get it by boat. So that was really nice of him. Yeah, so it's a 700 watt SFXL unit, fully modular, and it's platinum rated for efficiency. Yeah, it's a really nice unit. One of the, I mean, of course, like higher wattage, that's cool. But one of the big things I know a lot of people in the community have been looking forward to is the new fan controller, because the 500 watt SFXL, the SX700-LG, it's like both it and the SX600-G, the 600 watt SFX, both have a tendency to just like never run fanless. Like usually the fan's just always on after a while. But the new controller here is load based. So rather than looking strictly at the temperature to determine the fan speed, it looks at the current load level. And I've found that it's much more reliable in keeping the fan off. So like if your machine's just sitting idle, unless it's really, really hot inside the case, it should keep the fan off. Plus, like if you are under high load and then like say like you close the game, then it should pretty quickly, like I found either depending on load and temperature, it either just shut off almost immediately or it'd run the fan for like 5-6 seconds and then shut off. But it was fairly consistent. So that was really nice with the fan. The fan's, it's basically the same one that's in the SX500LG, The RPM range or curve is a little bit different, but it's like the same fan blades and stuff. So noise is comparable for the same RPMs, but it's definitely stays off longer, and then it's running at lower RPMs for the most part, since it's just higher efficiency and then a higher wattage. So yeah, I really like that part of it. Cabling's good, though I think it has 9 SATA connectors, which is it is silly, though not as silly as the Lian Li PE750, which has 12 SATA connectors, which I just don't understand, because what kind of ITX case or micro ATX case are you going to have that has 12 SATA bays or 12 drive bays of some kind?
Isn't it the SilverStone NES case that had that many bays? The one case?
Yeah, there's that, but it's like... So, I mean, 9, maybe. I can kind of understand that. The Lian Li has 12, though, which, like, there's full tower ATX cases that don't have 12 bays. So, I just...
You also need a board that can support that many, like...
Yeah, I know. So, the Lian Li just... I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. So, the SilverStone has 9, so that's not terrible. Has a floppy adapter, which is kind of strange, because I don't recall seeing that on the other SilverStones, but at least it's a separate adapter and it's not built into the cable. But yeah, cables are nice. I'm not sure what else to say, really. Like, unfortunately, my setup can only pull about 500 watts, so I can't really verify how well it does at the full 700 watts. I've been kind of considering to do funks and get two 290Xs and really be able to push these power supplies, since the wattages are quickly getting above what I can really test. But yeah, mainly the fan controller is kind of like my favorite part, is since it actually works. Like, it actually keeps the fan off at idle conditions for the vast majority of the time. But did you guys have any questions about it?
I had a few things that I noticed. So first off, I mean, your conclusion, as you sort of summarize it, you seemed all in all pretty positive. I mean, the one thing that became pretty clear, I mean, you're talking through some of the other things, obviously Lian Li's 750 watt option, and then Corsair entered the market. They now have a 600 watt option. And so, it used to be with the review, you'd always end it in sort of the same way. You'd be like, this is how it is. There's also nothing else. So, hey, we have it now. But now it's like, no, really. Like, there are 2 or 3 other units or options that you really have to sort of consider it against. Which is exciting in its own right, because where there was not even much choice. When this unit was announced a year ago, it was like, all right, give this to us now, because this will be it. And then it's coming out, and you have one that is a higher wattage, and you have others that are in the immediate vicinity of it.
Yeah, it's really crazy, how far we've come in just the last 2 or 3 years. Because yeah, I mean, when the 600 watt SFX Silverstone came out, I mean, that was crazy at the time. It's 600 watts SFX, what? And now we have Corsair has one, FSP has one, just for SFX, and then Anderson actually has one, though I don't think anybody's going to bring that to market anytime soon that I've heard of. And then SFXL, you got SilverStone, and then you got Lian Li. And what's really cool with that is that, because the 500 watt SFXL, several different companies brought that to market, and they basically just rebranded the base high power unit, or Surfa, same company. But the Lian Li unit's an enhanced unit. So now we got 2 different platforms for SFX, for high wattage platinum rated SFXL. So it'll be interesting to see if Be Quiet or Sharkoon or one of them just comes out with rebranded versions. So we'll have even more options.
And bear in mind, I mean, obviously, 700 watt and 750 watt sounds great when compared to a 600 watt. 600 watt unit is still enough to power two GTX 1080s and basically any CPU you could ever hope to pair with it. Like, I mean, this is crazy. And the other thing too is, you were able to get the casing, the external shroud off, and get a few good pictures of the internals of the 700 watt unit, and they are packed tight, man. That is a densely packed PCB board, and you have like,
it is fairly, though. It's not too bad. Yeah, I was expecting worse, really, and I guess it's just because of the efficiency, but the heat sinks on it are fairly puny.
Yeah,
they're not big chunky heat sinks like you would expect. So yeah, I'd love to see what they could do with, like, say, like a titanium rated, like maybe like a 500 watt titanium rated SFXL. Because I'm curious if we could. I would absolutely love to see like a fanless SFF unit, like a relatively high wattage one. So like
I don't know if
400
you'd be
to
able to
500
get to
watt.
500 watt though. That's
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. So I'm thinking maybe like a 400 watt titanium rated SFXL. I don't know. That would just be awesome.
I mean, there aren't that many titanium units in the world, period. I can only think of one or two off the top of my head.
They're a fair bit more common now. So SilverStone has them, Corsair has them, EVJ has them, and I think there's going to be a couple. Oh, Seasonic's going to come out with one soon, or if they haven't already. So
what's the highest one that's available?
1600, I think.
There's a 1600 watt one. Oh wow, I haven't been paying attention.
It has to be titanium at that because any less efficient on 120 volt, like here in the US, it would trip breakers.
Oh, okay. I guess that's a good reason.
I suppose it's not all about the high wattage though. Like, if you have, say, a 300 watt system, you go for that 750 watt power supply, you're going to be running practically fanless anyway with the product that is on the market.
Yeah, that's true too. So
that's a good point.
I don't know. I guess either a fanless 400 or a fan at 900 or something. So
right, where it is in effect fanless at the
yeah.
Either way, you get this, just different ways to get the same destination.
Yeah, we're getting close.
Well, closer at least. So the other thing I noticed about this review is that the fan itself isn't really new. It's just the implementation of it's different. In the noise section, though, you sort of said that the bearing noise was perhaps one of the more disappointing or at least annoying aspects of it. Yeah,
and that's the only reason I really noticed it is because I had the PE 750 to compare it against, because I kind of tested them both side by side. And I noticed the bearings on the SilverStone fan on the 700 watt were a fair bit noisier than the Lian Li, even though it's really weird though, because they both have the same model number. It's a Power Year, which I've never heard of them before, but they're both branded Power Year PY-12015H12S, which, as far as I can tell, it's PY Power Year 120 millimeter by 15 millimeter, because it's a slim 15 millimeter thick fan. Looking at the other, like, this particular fan's not on the Power Year website at all, but from what I can kind of tell, looking at the other fans they do have listed as like, there's HM and L kind of for different RPM versions of the same fan. Okay. So H would be like a high RPM version. Yeah. And then 12 volt, I'm assuming. And the S, I'm assuming, is sleeve bearing, because I noticed some had S and some just didn't have a letter at the end. Okay. But the noise that they both make kind of sounds like, it's kind of like the grinding noise of like ball bearing fans. But I'm thinking this is a sleeve bearing fan, because I think there was a different designator for ball bearing, or I don't remember. But anyway, so they both have the same model number, like the what's in the Lian Li unit and what's in the SilverStone unit, but the SilverStone one has a 0.22 amp rating on it, while the Lian Li has, I don't have it pulled up right now. It's like a 0.3 amp or something like that. It's a little bit higher. And the RPM range is different too. So the Lian Li has a slightly higher max RPM. So they're not the same fan, even though they both have the same model number.
Interesting.
So I'm not sure. I mean, so they have. I'm wondering if maybe there's slight differences in like the motor and the bearings between them, and that's why the Silverstone's louder, or if it's just manufacturing variation. So I'm not really sure. I only have one of each, so I can't really rule out just manufacturing variation there. So, but yeah, I did notice that at least with my particular samples, the Silverstone one bearing noise was a little bit louder. And that's one thing that I really like with the Corsair is that it had rifle bearings on the fan in the Corsair SF600, which is, as far as I could tell, basically it had just no bearing noise, which is one that's, unfortunately though, it's only a 92 millimeter and the fan controller in it's actually kind of aggressive. Like it's not, as far as just RPMs go, it's not that much lower than the 600 watt SFX Silverstone. Even though it's a bigger fan and it's kind of like a cleaner layout on the inside, it actually doesn't run the fan much slower. So
they're able to provide a 7-year warranty, right?
yeah. So overall, I mean, this Corsair one's relatively loud. But I do wish that we could get nicer bearings in these slim 120 fans. But as far as I know, I don't think anybody currently makes a slim 120 with anything other than either sleeve or ball bearings. So that's why I'm really hoping, because they had skipped. Let's see, they weren't at CES this year, so I'm really hoping that Noctua has an update on the slim 120 that they're developing at Computex. So I'm hoping in a couple of days that we'll hear an update from them and that it'll be coming to market soon. Because if it has like anything close to a comparable RPM range, I'm going to pop it in there and see if it can work as a replacement fan. Because yeah, I mean, we're still not to my ideal power supply. Like ideally it would be SFXL. I mean what we were saying earlier, like 900 watt titanium rated. I mean, that I realize that's a little impractical to actually develop and market. So I mean, for a more realistic ideal power supply, I'd like something like a 700, 800 watt SFXL platinum rated with a 120 fan with FDB, the fluid dynamic bearings, because I mean, those are really just kind of the best quality as far as like just noise and reliability. I think double ball bearings still has the edge in reliability, but definitely not in noise. So that would be my ideal. But I think like Silverstone and Lian Li, I think would both want one. There's just nobody makes one, so it's not really a matter even of just price. It's just nobody makes one, so they can't use one. So I'll definitely write up an article on like modding the unit with a Noctua fan, if it's not delayed again. I think that slim Noctua has been in development for like 2 years now, so we'll see.
Well, they're known for taking their sweet time on stuff, so.
Yeah, which, I mean, they're good quality products, so I can't blame them, but it is rather annoying to wait when, like it's literally the only option. There's, like, nobody else makes a 120 Slim FDB, so just waiting on that.
So we've mentioned it a few times, but maybe in part just because Silverstone themselves took a while to get this unit out to market. It was interesting because I want to say a month and a half ago, maybe closer to 2 months ago at this point, Lian Li came out of nowhere and announced a couple units, including their 750 watt unit, and no one was expecting it. Like there was no leak. Like as far as I knew, they'd never made power supplies before, and then they're like, "Oh, here you go, and look, it's even higher wattage than what we've been waiting forever to Silverstone to release." And then, out of the blue, all of a sudden, this is on the 16th, so this would have been just under 2 weeks ago. Someone on our forum, let me find their name so I can give them credit. Oh, Eiforlicht noticed that it was listed on Newegg. And Lian Li didn't announce this. They didn't send out a press release. They didn't go bragging to people and go, "All right, you can finally get it." It was just on there. We did some follow up, and it apparently appeared on Newegg a day or two earlier than when they expected the formal first sort of initial release date to be. But even so, not with a bang, but with a whimper, this unit became available and actually beat Silverstone to market, even though we'd known about the Silverstone for like the better part of a year. So I wrote up about this on the website, and I'll put a link on the show notes. And then, of course, with our incredible connections, such as those to the internet that allow us to do first day shipping on Newegg, we were able to get our hands on a Lian Li unit and have been testing that as well. I'm hoping that by the time that this podcast goes up, we'll have a review posted for that as well, because then we will have reviewed both of these very high wattage SFX Units. But given that we're on the precipice of being able to publish anyway, James, I was wondering if you could. I have two questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
The first is your initial thoughts of Lian Li's PE750, and then my second would be, I mean, given that these two are relatively similar, I guess my initial impression or reaction when I heard about this unit was like, I wonder what's ultimately going to be the deciding factor for folks when it comes to picking between this unit and the one that Silverstone has been offering, because they're on paper they're pretty similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they are. I guess first though is like Lian Li has made power supplies in the past or sold them under their name, but it's really weird because like they'll come out with a couple, and then like relatively quickly like they'll just quit selling them. So I looked, I think 2008 they offered some, and then 2011 they offered some ATX units. But it seemed like both times they were kind of like short-lived endeavors. And then I think there's a couple cases that come with a SFX unit, like kind of like just a gray industrial type unit. So nothing like special, just basically what you would expect that for a power supply that comes bundled with a case, except maybe not like completely terrible. So I mean, they have done power supplies before, but it's like they've never really committed to it like Corsair or some of the other case manufacturers have. So, and I mean, you can tell though, I mean, it's rather frustrating because like the manual for this thing consists of a single sheet of paper. That's the manual, and you can't even download it from their website because, so the first download link, if you go to the product page for the PE750 on Lian Li's website, there's like two download links. The first one goes to a Dropbox page, which has been disabled because it's exceeded its allowed bandwidth. And the second link goes to a Google Drive link, which gives a 404 because it can't find it. So like you can't even get it on the website, but I mean it's just literally like if the manual on the website's the same thing that came with the power supply, it's a single sheet of paper. I mean it's printed on both sides, but it's a single sheet of paper.
Is it really, really small type?
Man. It's mostly pictures.
Of course.
Like there's a load table, like the same one that's on the side of the power supply, like just the amperage and voltage, and then there's diagrams of like the dimensions of the power supply, which is kind of neat. Like it even has like the dimensions for the mounting holes for the power supply, but I mean you could find that on the internet easily enough because it's standardized. And then the back of it has like the diagram for the cable lengths, and that's basically it. Like there's no warranty information, there's no like details or installation guide or anything.
Dimensions are all you need to know.
Yeah.
I can't even load their website right now. It's not working.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but with a power supply, do you really need more than just the spec table?
Yeah, exactly.
There's only one real way of installing it.
but it's really strange, just compared to everybody else. Like that's all it comes with. So, that was kind of weird. I mean, the unit itself though is pretty good quality. So, I think I mentioned this, but it's the OEM for the Lian Li units enhance, which the SilverStone it's Surfa or High Power. They're both the same company pretty much, which is kind of weird because SilverStone for quite a while mostly used enhance for their high-end SFF units. So the 600 watt the SX700G was an enhanced unit, and I believe the ST45SF-G, the 450 watt modular SFX unit from SilverStone, was also by enhance. But then they went to Surfa for the 500 watt SFXL, and then they've used Surfa again for the 700 watt SFXL that they've made. And then their upcoming SFX units with the 92 millimeter fans, the SX650G, I believe, like that's also Surfa. So they're using Surfa for both SFXL and SFX, but then Lian Li is using Enhance, who previously only did SFX, to do SFXL. So it's kind of strange. So they've kind of like switched places. So yeah, it's an Enhance unit, 750 watt, so 50 watts more than the SilverStone. Like we mentioned, same fan. The weirdest thing though is the fan controller is just really odd. Because most fan controllers, like with semi-passive units, like depending on whether it's load based or temperature based, either way though, I mean the idea is like up to a certain point the fan's off, then the fan starts at like a relatively low RPM, and then as the load or temperature increases, the fan RPM increases. So I mean that seems fairly reasonable, right? On the Lian Li, the fan's off. It's actually semi-fanless, which is not mentioned on the website anywhere. So yeah, it is actually a semi-fanless unit.
You'd think they'd want to mention that.
Yeah, you would think that would be kind of an important marketing point, but I don't know. I guess they don't think so. So yeah, semi-fanless, and then the fan starts at I don't have the load table in front of me, but yeah, at about like 200 watts. In my the 200 watt test, the fan kicked on at 850 RPM. So what's weird is by the time I got to the 500 watt test, and this is AC from the wall, because I don't have a proper load tester. So from 200 watt to 500 watt, it had increased to 860 RPM. So the fan controller on this thing is a little weird. So that's kind of what my issue with it is like it's very well, I don't know, it's weird because it is semi-fanless, so that's a plus, but then it doesn't really vary the RPM at the load levels, which is odd. I'm really curious. I really wish for the Lian Li that I could draw the full 700 watts, because I'm wondering if it'd be 870 RPM at 750 watts.
I wonder if its approach is it'll hardly touch it unless you're really close to whatever it's decided the thermal limit is, and then if you begin to reach that, it'll just ramp it up massively.
It does take into account temperature. What I did was that just to kind of double check that it worked, is I had a heat gun and I just pointed it at the intake, and it does increase the RPM in that instance. So it does take temperature into account, and it will increase the fan speed in response to a higher intake temp. But it's weird that it doesn't vary at all with load. It's off and then it's on, and then it barely increases at least if the temperature is steady. So I don't know. It's just really weird. Yeah. So what happens though is that, so this is where it gets kind of hard to say which is the better unit between it and the SilverStone. like if for whatever reason, like if you're just right on the edge and like you need the extra 50 watts, then get the Lian Li. I mean, it's not a bad unit, but if you're like most people and like that extra 50 watts isn't the deciding factor, then it gets a little harder to say which is better, because the Lian Li is more expensive. Assuming the Silverstone comes in at MSRP. So I think the Lian Li is 160 as of now on Newegg, and then the Silverstone I think is supposed to be 150 MSRP. So it may come in under that once it's available. And then as far as niceties, I guess they're fairly comparable. Like the Lian Li does come with the SFX to ATX bracket, whereas the Silverstone does not. But they're cheap enough, so I don't know if that'd really be a deciding factor alone. But as far as like noise goes, it's so the Silverstone, at least in open air, will keep the fan off longer than the Lian Li. Because on test 3 for me, the Silverstone fan kicked on, which was like 325 watts, I think, was that test. Whereas the Lian Li kicked on in test 2, which was 180 watts, I think, when I tested it. So the Lian Li fan kicks on sooner and then at a higher RPM, because the Lian Li starts at 850 RPM, and then the Silverstone starts at about 620 RPM. But then like once you get to the other end, like the 500 watt test, then the Lian Li is still basically at 850. Whereas the Silverstone's like at 1180, I think, or 1120, something like that.
That's a pretty big difference.
Yeah. So at the high end, the Lian Li's quieter, but then at the lower end, the Silverstone keeps the fan off longer, and then it's at a lower RPM once it does start. So
it really comes down to like how often you're going to be at which level of power, and when do you value the noise more, like. Because I could totally see some people who need the additional wattage for like really high end parts, right? You know, like the multiple graphics cards, and they're doing gaming, but like when they're gaming, they have their headphones on or they're blasting sound, and so they don't really care how loud it is. But then, you know, okay, now they're just browsing Reddit and, you know, not listening to anything and searing their ears because their Lian Li power supply is so gosh darn loud.
Yeah, so like for me, when I'm at when it's at high load, it's probably because I'm gaming, so I'm gonna have headphones on. So like the Silverstone, I don't mind if it's louder, but like at idle, I mean, a lot of times I am listening to music, but there's a lot of times where I'm not. So like I would rather it, like I put a higher priority on like low noise at low loads. So for me, the Silverstone, I prefer the Silverstone's fan controller behavior. But I mean, really, that's personal preference. It's just going to depend on like what you prefer. But the other oddity, like what I really don't like about the way the Lian Li behaves like that, is that it only comes with a 1-year warranty. Which like the only reason I even like, that's what Newegg says, at least, because like the Lian Li website says absolutely nothing about it, and the manual says nothing about it.
I'm
so,
on
like,
it right now.
Yeah. Like, it could come with a 30-day warranty for all I know. It doesn't say. So, like, to me, like, it running at... I mean, that's kind of where, like, I'm really not a power supply expert. I can't look at the internals and say, oh, yeah, like, based on my analysis of this layout and these component choices, like, the 850 RPM is going to be plenty. Like, I really don't know. I mean, for what it's worth, I don't think the Lian Li mentions this either, the website, but... the Lian Li and the Silverstone both have all Japanese capacitors. The Silverstone mostly has Nippon Chemicon, whereas the Lian Li has mostly Rubicon, which they're both Japanese capacitors. I think the Chemicon is considered a little bit better, but they're both Japanese caps, and so they're both good quality. And they're both units use at least 105 degrees Celsius rated caps. I think some of the caps in both units were even 125 degree rated. So they're both like high quality caps, and they're high temperature caps. So, I mean, they can take some heat, but I don't know. I'm still a little nervous about it only running the fan at 850 RPM at 500 watts when it only comes with the 1-year warranty. And I don't know, that's just makes me a little leery. But I mean, really, we'll have to wait for like kind of better analysis from like johnnyguru.com or Tech Power Up or something to give like a better overview of the build quality.
I'll take it from both.
But yeah, the 1-year warranty is really that's just makes me kind of leery of the unit as a whole. I mean, power supplies really should come with longer warranties. I mean, like Corsair, I think offers
7 year.
Is it 7 years on the SF600?
I think so. Yeah.
I know some of their units come with 10 years, but I think the SFs aren't
7,
part of that. I think they only get the 7 year.
Only 7.
Only 7 years. I mean, the Silverstone's 3, so not industry leading, but not bad either. But then the Lian Li with just 1, I don't know. We'll see, I guess. I mean, in that really, I mean, it looks to be built, like the build quality looks to be good. I mean, it's enhanced. I mean, they've been building high wattage SFF power supplies for a while now. So, like, they know what they're doing. So, I mean, I don't expect it to just, like, keel over in 3 months, but I still would have liked to seen a longer warranty.
If I'm being honest with you, one of my biggest refrains about this power supply is the page on the website about it. So you've already mentioned how they have 2 links to manuals and both of them don't work. I have independently tested and confirmed that this is the case. The first link goes to the cute 429 error page on Dropbox, the truck drawn in colored pencil, encumbered with a Dropbox in the way. The less elegant not found error 404 for the Google Drive link is less entertaining. But there are also a few images on their product page that don't load. Their website often takes a few minutes to load. And then they talk about features like the honey combo mesh.
Oh, yeah, there's a few interesting tidbits on it. Let me see if I can find a picture. On the side of the unit, and it's on the box too. Oh yeah, it says caution hazardous area. Okay. Select the right voltage! Exclamation mark. There's no voltage selector though. And then like with fan sensor control. Okay. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
And then beyond that, I mean, you alluded to it, but like 12 SATA.
Yeah, there's just. I mean, the bad English I could kind of excuse, like typos, like the honey combo, but the select the right voltage, like this has active PSC. There's no input voltage selector, and then like. And there's just like the warranty void if removed, but it's on like the big sticker on the side of it. There's not any warranty void stickers on any of the screws, so you could like completely disassemble this thing, and like, apparently that's okay.
That's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah,
that's a feature. Oh,
and then also like, I mean, it's just an oddity I noticed, but like the Lian Li's website, the pictures, I don't know if you noticed, they're actually hosted by Google Picasa.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Like if you open up some of these pictures, like in a new, like open up just the image directly, some of them are actually hosted by Lian Li, but others are hosted by Google. So, I mean, I don't want to harp on that too much because, I mean, Lian Li, I mean, they're aluminum case manufacturers and not website developers, but it's still kind of odd.
I mean, to me, it's just like, yes, I just think some of the decisions, the actual unit were curious. You know, the floppy and the SATA being the obvious things, and then, as you mentioned, like the just inexplicable behavior of the fan controller. I mean, I'm happy that this thing exists, to be sure, and I think it's incredibly impressive that they went from no one even thinking about them to announcing that they're going to have the highest rated power supply in the industry to just like, oh, and now it's available. Oh,
yeah, really
I can buy
weird.
It now.
Yeah, it's just like all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, just announced out of nowhere. Like they didn't send a press release that I could tell.
Nothing.
The only reason I found out about it's because Very Rarium on the forum tipped me to it, and then like I had sent an email to like the press contact, which they don't. I guess they don't have an internal press contact, or maybe not one that speaks English, because they outsource it to another company, and I still haven't heard from him on availability and price. But I mean, it's been out for like a week or two on New Wake, so it's just interesting. I guess it's just kind of a symptom. Like Lian Li is actually a relatively small company compared to like, because I mean Corsair's like huge. I mean they do like $1 billion or $2 billion a year or something crazy.
And SilverStone even is pretty
SilverStone's a
sizable
fairly
on a
large
relative
company.
basis.
Yeah, they do OEM for stuff. Like they had the Falcon Northwest, like all their cases, as far as I can tell, are actually OEM'd by SilverStone. So
yeah, but like I say all of this like to give more credit than I think Lian Li has gotten, because I think they deserve it. But like, you know, SilverStone has spent a year getting people really excited about a unit, and it's, you know, it's just about to become available after all this time. Lian Li made one of those higher rated, and in this like near a span that's maybe a tenth as long time wise, announced and released the thing. You know, and like from an execution standpoint, I mean, yeah, there may be certain things that are confusing or we don't like, but they did it. Like, geez.
Well, I mean,
all the while, everyone's like waiting with bated breath for the 700 watt unit from SilverStone, and then they just show up and they're like, "Oh, I guess we'll just do this." They plop the unit on the ground and walk away.
Well, to be fair to Silverstone, I mean, they did intend to launch it like a month or two after they had originally announced it. It's just it got delayed, so they didn't plan for it to take a year. And then who knows how long this has been in development for the Lian Li unit here. But yeah, definitely it's Lian Li. I mean, it is cool that it was announced and then it was available. But I mean, I would have had liked to seen some more kind of press about it.
For sure. Maybe next time. All right, I think we've covered about as much as possible these power supplies, and of course,
actually, there is one more thing.
Go for it.
Just kind of a little thing. So, Overclock.net has a weekly kind of like radio show podcast thing, and the latest one they had I think it was Walter, I forget his last name, who does PR or marketing, I guess, for Seasonic. And so they had him on kind of talking about stuff. And the question came up about, is Seasonic going to release any SFX units? Because this is something like kind of ever since Silverstone really started pushing SFX as a form factor and it's kind of become popular for SFF cases, people have been kind of wanting a Seasonic take on it. And they have a few SFX units, but they're like industrial, like gray box 300 watt things that aren't exciting at all. And in the interview or whatever, he did say that there will be some SFX units that they'll be showing at Computex, though he immediately like launched into like a clarification, like they have like a retail division and an OEM division, and then he didn't really clarify which one the SFX would be of. So I don't know if it's just going to be like another gray box industrial unit, just maybe a little bit higher wattage, or if it's going to be like a proper like 500, 600 watt gold rated, like fully modular or something like that. So we'll see in a couple days on that, I guess.
I hope it's the latter. I mean, I said this off the podcast, but you know, in the world of power supplies, from what I can tell, you know, first off, generally Seasonic's considered to be among the best in terms of quality. They really only care about making really nice units, but like just through the people I know, Seasonic seems to be the most cultish in terms of people who like will only buy units that they've made, and yeah, that just sort of have that level of appeal and loyalty. So it'd be a great endorsement of the form factor if they could provide one or two really compelling units, even if they weren't like, whoa, 750 watt platinum, even if they were like, one or two 500 watt SFX or SFXL units, just the fact that they toss their hat into the ring would be pretty meaningful. So yeah. All right, and with that, I guess we can wrap up coverage of power supplies and all of this. As I said at the top of the news segment, I'm sure there'll be more announcements during Computex, and some of the stuff that we talked about now were kind of like pre-announcements to that, like with the Dagger line, and we'll hope to learn a lot more information about these units as Computex progresses. When does Computex start, by the way? Is that the 31st or?
May 31st to June 4th.
Okay.
That's in Taiwan time also.
Gotcha. And do you guys know of anything else to be expected during Computex? Because there's a fair amount coming out. I think both AMD and Intel will have some stuff, but I haven't been following terribly closely. So
yeah, I mean, we should see Broadwell E. Well, I'm not 100% if Broadwell E will officially announce, but we should see at least like refreshed boards, like X99 boards. And then I think AMD's got some announcements, so hopefully we'll learn more about Polaris and AM4 and maybe Zen. So yeah, more power supplies. Hopefully like a lot more storage, so M.2 drives, PCI Express drives. I haven't really heard a whole lot about cases. I don't know if we're going to see much as far as case announcements go, but I hadn't really heard anything either way on that.
fair enough. How about you, John? Is there anything on your radar? Or?
No, James pretty much covered it.
Covered it for me too. All right, well, in that case, I guess we'll wrap up for the news for now. Obviously, for our next episode, we'll have so much to talk about, but I think now is the time for us to transition into our main feature, and that is, of course, the second edition of our small form factor build challenge. It'll sound a lot better with the effects applied, I promise.
I sure hope so.
I spent maybe 7 seconds making that sound decent for the first time we used it. So I'll spend like 14 seconds and apply 2 separate effects that hopefully in combination will make that much more forgivable. In any case, for the last month when we did this, we had sort of the inaugural version of the segment. We wanted something that was a bit of a challenge. So we set a $450 gaming rig, but we had to buy the OS ourselves. And so that led to some interesting decisions with respect to Windows or not Windows, and then, what you did with the money. So of course you had case. Yeah, case or not case apparently had to be decided.
You don't need a case. It's optional.
That's what you say. So, whereas last time we sort of picked the initial segment just for the sake of expediency and all of this, one of the points of this whole segment was that we really wanted the community to drive everything from voting and picking winners to also deciding what sorts of builds we were going to make. So a short time after we sort of posted the first thread of this online where people could vote for the winner, I made another thread where people were able to sort of make suggestions for types of builds we could do. And we were actually able to collect a bunch of suggestions and perform a poll to let the community decide what we would do for our second small form factor build challenge. And the winner, curious enough, was actually another budget build. It was one of the newer members to our forum suggested we do a $300 build. Thankfully, this time we don't have to worry about the operating system, so we can just all assume that we're running Windows or what have you. But for $300, we had to build what we, in our opinions, were the best ITX computers that don't have discrete graphics cards. So, whether or not you interpreted that as someone that has no gaming needs whatsoever, or, just making the most balanced build, or maybe like you wanted to go with a really great APU that happened to have good integrated graphics or whatever, like, we'll each be explaining our decisions and why we think our $300 desktop computer is the best. But the focus was really on just what's the best possible computer you can hope to build across everything for $300, keeping it small, not getting any discrete graphics cards, just keeping it real simple, keeping the budget real low and accessible. And I have to say, I was actually really excited for this. Jay's not with us this episode. He didn't seem terribly excited, but I was excited for it because, I fully recognize that I exist at a very, very different price point when it comes to looking at these things. I actually don't own a desktop right now. I'm living on a laptop, but like when I think about the sort of desktop I would build, there's definitely another digit involved. And so, I recognize that I was pretty separated from the reality of like, well, how far can you go if you're only spending in the vicinity of like $300 on a desktop? And I have to say, I don't know about you guys, we have not seen any of each other's builds, so we'll be reacting for the first time to each other's builds as we go through them. But I felt like you could go a heck of a lot further with $300 than I would have initially guessed. Like, the computer I was able to put together was awesome for that amount of money, and it's astounding to me how cheap everything from processing to integrated graphics to storage to memory is nowadays. I remember when I was in high school, I actually ran a seminar where we were building desktop computers for like $500. And we were talking about how easy it was, but it was still sort of challenging to make sure you had everything you needed to really keep the total experience kind of, complete and competent and whatnot. But like with this, I was just like, oh, well, it'd be nice if I could have that. Oh, look at that, I can. Oh, it'd be nice if I could have it. Well, I can have that too. And then I had my build, and it was just under $300. And I'm like, well, that was pretty easy. So in any case, I cannot wait to see what you guys have done. I know at least one of you has been saying that you think you've got this totally in the bag before the competition's even started. But before we sort of dive in, just to sort of reiterate the rules, since this is still sort of a new segment, we have, as picked by the community, we have a topic or theme or what have you, which I mentioned before. This go around, it was for $300 or less, the best ITX build without a discrete graphics card, and what the best means in terms of those criteria is really up to us, and we'll make arguments one way or the other, but that was the criteria. We have to stick with buying new parts, so no used. We had to stick with either Newegg or Amazon as the place to get them. Now, we've had roughly a week or so of our own time to go and use like PC Part Picker or whatever to build a shopping list. And we have to be able to prove that at some point in time, the total cost for everything we picked was $300 or less. Now, of course, prices move around constantly. So, for example, yesterday my build was under $300, but today it's like just barely above $300. The price, by the way, including rebates and not including shipping, just to kind of keep shopping easy for us individually. But if we can prove that throughout the grace period in which we could do builds, that it was available for a grand total of $300 or less, it still qualifies because we were still able to hit that price point. And we'll be sharing build lists in the show notes and also on the forum as we give people the opportunity to learn about our choices and vote for what they think is best. But yeah, so those are the rules. Those are the criteria. As always, we are going to go through all of the builds in alphabetical order of first name. And so, James, I'm going to pass things along to you. And it's at this moment in time that John and I are going to click the link and for the very first time, look at the build you made. So I'm launching it now. Why don't you defend your probably heinous choices?
Interesting.
Okay, so there is a case this time, and it's actually a kind of nice one. It's the Antec ISK 310-150. So this is a pretty small ITX case. It's like kind of a slim, it's very slim, just really compact one. It looks like it uses an external PSU, but it actually has an internal PSU. It's 150 watts. It is like kind of a custom format though. It's not a TFX or anything like that. I think it's kind of like a Flex ATX, but like the end of it kind of like comes up a bit so it can fit like I think it's a 80 millimeter fan, instead of being stuck with like a 40 mil. So, kind of a oddball PSU. But it is internal though. So, cause I just despise external power supplies. So yeah, case is fairly nice. I don't know if I've worked in the 310. I have worked in a couple of the 300, which it's just a different faceplate. So yeah, mini-ITX has a single slot, low profile expansion slot. So you could even throw like a kind of like a lower end video card if you wanted. Got a ASRock H110M ITX AC motherboard. So nothing special. It's a ITX motherboard with for Skylake, and it does have built-in wireless though, which is nice. I did the Intel Pentium G4400. Nothing fancy, just a basic dual-core processor. But what I find is that with a SSD, and I went with the Crucial BX200 240 gig, like with an SSD for most tasks, like just the dual core is more than enough. Like the SSD gives you enough kind of speed as far as like loading the OS and stuff that it'll feel very snappy for like surfing the internet and things. Which, I mean, $300 machine, I'm assuming that's mostly what it's going to be used for. Like you're not going to be like editing videos on a $300 computer. So got 8 gigs of RAM this time. Just a single stick, so that way if you, for whatever reason, if you do decide you need 16 gigs of RAM in your $300 computer, you can upgrade it later. Yeah, that pretty much covers it. So, I mean, it is upgradable. So, like, yes, it's a Pentium. No, it's not fantastic. But hey, I mean, 150 watts to play with. I mean, you could throw an i5 in there with no problem. I mean, you could even put in like one of them low profile single slot 750 Ti's and have a halfway decent gaming box if you wanted. And I'm not sure what happened yesterday. It was like $264. Now it's $285 for no apparent reason.
It's still under budget though.
It is still under budget. I was really hoping it would be like the 260, so that way you could easily, like, depending on your preference, for just a little over 300, you could either go to an i3 instead of the Pentium. You could like throw a hard drive in there in addition to the SSD, or you could like, it'd be a fair bit more, but you could put a video card in here. Not anything.
The option value.
Yeah. So now with only $15 to play with, you'd have to spend more, but yeah, still under budget. So
go to lunch. There's lunch for a day or two.
Yeah.
So there's so many things I want to say, but I can't say them because it's not that time yet. John, it is your turn. You are next in the alphabetical order. So I'm now opening the link to yours. You've been the one talking up the most.
Yeah, mine's a little different to James's one, as you'll see.
Okay, all right. So I thought this was what you were gonna do. All right.
Okay.
But please explain.
You thought this was what I was going to do. That's interesting.
Yeah, I did.
So we had a $300 budget to work with, and I thought, well, there's only so much you can do within that budget, and you might as well just save them, build something cheap now, something that could be repurposed is the whole point behind this. So this, in the future, once you've actually saved up for a decent system, you could repurpose this as a home server or a home theater PC. So my total comes out to $143.46. So under half of the given budget. But for that, you get 8 gigs of RAM, single stick, so you can upgrade it. 500 gig hard drive. Yes, physical, mechanical hard drive. But that kind of fits in with the home theater PC kind of deal. An AMD 5350 2.05 gigahertz quad core, AM1. MSI AM1i mini-ITX board, and a PVIA, which is a sort of an OEM kind of case manufacturer, ITX case with a 250 watt power supply included. The case does support a low-profile single-slot graphics card and a slim line optical drive. Also interesting, it has eSATA on the front of it, which is a little old school, but oh well. So yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen this one before.
It's an interesting case. It's the layout's quite cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. So I expected you to do like the ridiculously under budget. I was thinking probably closer to $200. It's an interesting. I mean, I'm not going to take any criticisms, but I will say it's different from what I expected. I like it though.
Yeah, for another $14 or $15, you could get a 2.25 gigahertz AMD 5370 AM1 quad core, which has only recently been released.
Yeah.
I thought, no, I'll just go half the budget, and it gives you that extra bit of money to save towards a decent system.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a really nice candle at dinner amount of money left.
The money left is a car payment for me. But the whole system, it's more than enough for basic gaming. You could play Minecraft on this, not a problem. You could play most of the online kind of Dota 2 kind of things on this, as well as any web browsing and miscellaneous that you do, because it is a full quad-core processor with a decent integrated graphics chip in it.
All right, so that is your build, which leaves me to talk through mine, so go ahead and open mine. All right, so actually, in fact, let me share. There we go. All right, so a few interesting decisions, but overall, I think pretty simple. I basically just tried to make what I could feasibly defend as being the best computer you could build within budget. So you'll notice right now it's just barely above budget. If you look at the histogram, you can see the price bump. So before that, it was under 300, so it's within budget. But right now, it's like $1.93 above. I don't know what went up. I'll look into it. So I'll start with the motherboard, the exact same motherboard that James picked, and I suspect we both picked it because it's the cheapest motherboard that it exists for Skylake. He was talking about all the great features, like, oh, it has Wi-Fi built in and whatnot. I don't care. I literally just picked the cheapest one I could find, $69.99. It is nice for what it is. ASRock, pretty well reviewed. It does everything you need it to and nothing you don't. Went with Skylake just because I wanted sort of the upgradability. I wanted a modern platform. I also wanted really good integrated graphics. And so unlike James, I actually went with the i3-6300. So not only is that a more performant processor, but it also has the, it's not Iris Pro level graphics, but it's kind of the tier below that. So for light gaming of most sorts, so long as you're not playing on a massive resolution panel, let's face it, with a $300 computer, you're probably not anyway. It'll work just fine, certainly for doing any regular desktop class things, from lots of Chrome tabs to, Excel. I mean, any of those basic computing use cases, you'll be totally fine. And I am 99% sure that the 6300 is hyper-threaded, so it's it's 2 physical cores but 4 logical cores. So even for decent multitasking and whatnot, you'll be doing just fine. For memory, I went with a single stick of Corsair Vengeance 8 gigs. Nothing particularly special, but you can upgrade it to 16 by adding another 8 gig stick, and I think 8 gigs is plenty for most people even today. For storage, I went with a 120 gig Team SSD. It's not an incredibly popular brand, but reviews from what I could find were decent. It's 120 gigs. It's not an exceptionally fast SSD, but it's an SSD, and I think that most people's storage needs would be covered by this. If people had lots of additional stuff, you could just rely on, I don't know, like cloud services or something. So it's not, it's not meant to store tons of information. It's just meant to really make sure that the computer is as performant as possible. The case is the Raidmax Atomic mini-ITX tower case. Now, I absolutely chose this case because it's beautiful and made of aluminum and glass. I did not pick this case because it's $39.99 with a $30 mail-in rebate, making the total price only $10. That is not the reason I picked this case. The reason I picked this case is because it's beautiful, not because it's ludicrously inexpensive and I was forced to take it. I assure you. identically, I picked the EVGA 430 80 plus certified ATX power supply, not because it's $30 with a $10 mail-in rebate card, but because it is an excellent, beautiful, wonderful power supply for the price from a brand. It's not the EVGA I picked before that John decided wasn't good. It's actually a slightly different one that I'm not sure whether or not Johnny Guru tested because I didn't bother to look because I didn't want to. But I assure you, it's fine. Everything is fine. This power supply is at least as good as any of the ones that are included with the cases that they picked. I at least bought mine off the shelf. But yeah, overall, I mean, you know, you're getting an i3 modern processor with near top of the line integrated graphics, 8 gigs of memory, an SSD, a decent motherboard, all in a very, very nice looking case that costs as much as a Subway footlong. And all of that barely, just barely within the $300 budget. So that's my build. So that concludes the first segment of our SFF Build Challenge, the peaceful times that are us proclaiming why ours is the best. But now it's time for us to deride and conclude why everyone else's is the worst. And of course, we start at the top of the list. That would be you, James. Why do we suck?
All right, so I'll start with John's. So you better save up for a new computer because that thing's going to be slow. I mean, 5350, I mean, it's okay. But I mean, that combined with a 500 gig white label hard drive, so like who knows what it even is. It probably started off life as a Seagate and then got refurbished, and they don't even want to put their name on it anymore.
Oh my God.
So it's going to be slow, and it's probably going to die probably soon. And then, but then the case, I don't know. I mean, Aibohphobia, they're never known for high quality cases, but I mean, 250 watt plus the case for, what was it, $30, $35? So it's probably about the same wattage as mine, if that. So I don't think it's as bad as Jay's choice from last time, but it's kind of there. But I mean, really, a unbranded hard drive. I mean, Seagates are bad enough, but just like unbranded. And there's like no room to upgrade this thing because you're stuck on AM1. Which, I mean, the processors are not super terrible, but they're not super great either, and like there's just no room to upgrade. But man, that hard drive, ooh. Yeah. So and then for let's see, and then for Josh's build, I mean, yeah, it's an i3, so I had to give you credit for that. Good processor, great choice of motherboard. I will say that. It's a fantastic choice there. Case, I mean, case is bad. It's definitely a lot bigger than the other two, but it is still under 15 liters, so I'll give you that. Power supply is actually decent. It's not fantastic, but it's not terrible. But it is an SSD. But 120 gig, it's okay. But Team, I've never had much luck with them. Both their RAM and their power supplies, like at work, like they just die, or they don't work. Like to me, like in this day and age, if you're gonna get an SSD, it should be made by like somebody who makes their own NAND. So that's gonna be Samsung, Intel, or Crucial, or Toshiba if you can bring it in yourself to trust OCZ. So yeah, for storage, I mean, it's an SSD, I'll give you that, but Team, like, no, it will be relatively fast, but who knows how long it will survive. But other than that, though, I really, I don't know, it's actually not too bad, I had to say. It is a little over budget, but
It qualifies. It is over budget now, but it qualifies.
Yeah. I just better hope those rebates don't go away tomorrow.
Buy now. Bye.
Oh
man.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have that much to say though. I mean, Intel. I do agree with that. Intel was the way to go. Give you some room to upgrade. But yeah, I guess that's all I had to say. Mostly, it's just, man, John, that hard drive. I don't know what to say, man. I really don't know what to say.
Well, you know, it's his turn to say something about your build, James, because John, it is your turn.
I suppose I'm not allowed to poke in a little defense there, am I?
Well, you can do it briefly at the end of your comments.
Aww. Well, actually, I'm going to combine your two because your builds are so similar. It's not funny. It's the boring choices. You've gone from the typical, like your Pentium or i3. They're basically the same thing anyway. Hyperthreading's worthless in most applications. Then uninspiring. That's all I have to say. Yeah. I'm drawing a blank actually. Yeah. But I mean, for the price of one of your systems, you could buy two of mine and build one for your wife so she doesn't get pissy that you're spending money on computer parts.
You've got a very narrow window here in which to...
Yeah, I pretty much blanked.
I mean, yeah. Can I go? Because I'll start by giving you some credit. So, yeah. So, So I did expect you to go this sort of cheaper route. So I think there's like a great thing about that and a terrible thing about that. And of course, I'm going to say these in ways that make me sound like I'm the best. I'll start with James though. I'll start with James's build. So James, your build is like my build light, right? It's like, let's do what Joshua did, except we'll do it slightly worse. And I'll give you credit. You have a better, larger SSD for sure. You know, just matter of fact, that's the case. However, you have a much less performant processor, and that not only includes the processing side, it also includes the integrated graphics side. And although I agree that your storage solution is better, I think overall we're kind of equal. Like, you know, like the case, we both have kind of like whatever cases. I would say mine's looks a little better, but mine's is also dirt cheap, so I'm not pretending that it's super nice. And then you use the included 150 watt power supply. Mine's is 430 watts, but your case is a lot smaller. Like, I would say, okay, you could argue the way that's sort of a wash. Yes, you have the better storage solution. I have the better CPU solution. I think that matters more for most people at this price point. Then we move along to John's build. And now, John, I have to give you credit. You did something great. You saw that one of the elements of this challenge, it wasn't just like the literal interpretation of like just hit the $300 price point and make the best thing, whatever you think. You were realizing, no, this is about like someone who wants to spend as little money as possible to make a computer that does just enough. And when you built this, what you're basically saying is you think you can do that for even less money, for like $150, for like half the price. Really, to me, the problem is that the longevity of this in so many ways is so highly compromised. You've picked the motherboard's literally $15. Like, a pizza costs more than $15. That's a whole motherboard. And, you know, the processor, I mean, it was a great value in its time, but, you know, these things just don't age well, and it's already kind of just past that point where the value option in terms of the reasonable, useful life of it, I don't think it's really worth it. And then, you know, James spent a lot of time criticizing your hard drive choice, which to me feels like a self-inflicted wound. You have all this money. Like, you could just spend another $40. You would have still been way under budget, and you could have gotten, like, a great Crucial SSD like he did. Or you could have spent, like, another $10 and gotten, like, a mid-range SSD like I did. Or even just a little more and still have gotten, like, a hard drive. So I don't really understand why you felt you had to cheap out there. unless you're just really, really trying to stay under 150. And then the case is, again, uninspiring. I mean, it works. Doesn't look particularly special. Like, the size, again, is sort of a nice thing about it, but you've only got a 250 watt power supply and all of this. And yeah, I mean, look, the challenge, the name of the challenge was the best ITX non-discrete GPU computer for $300, and I just don't think this hits it. I think it's neat and interesting in its own right, but I really think that in terms of the spirit and intent of the challenge, that you guys just didn't quite get there relative to my build, which has the fastest CPU, fastest integrated GPU, the most power delivery, and the most flexibility. So yeah, that is our 3 build. Sadly, Jay could not participate as he is, I don't know, doing other unrelated things that don't involve speccing out incredibly inexpensive desktop builds.
Otherwise indisposed.
Yeah, he's otherwise indisposed. But needless to say, we'll be posting all of this information online, both on the SFF network as well as on the forum. Definitely look for those if you're listening to this podcast, because we tend to at least try to put them up but around the same time. And then we'll have a period of around 2 weeks or so where you guys can vote for who you think did the best job. I'm actually really curious. I think John, you actually have a good chance of winning this, if only because I think you creatively went about doing this. I think your hard drive choice was horrendous, but we'll see.
Hey, it's
white label?
It's probably a white label hard drive is basically just something that was supposed to go into a DVR or set-top box, and they just like end-aligned the box and had all these spare hard drives floating around. So it's probably Western Digital Blue or a Seagate Barracuda or whatever.
So white label means like they remove the branding,
Yeah,
like
it's like
it's mystery box hard drive.
Yeah, but it'd be like from a major OEM, so Western Digital or Seagate, basically. Probably.
Oh, also, so throughout this competition, James, I forgot to use this comment in my critique. I'm going to use it now because it's worth it. So the moment that you mentioned that your build includes a case, George said, "So the most improved award goes to."
Hey, you take the case out of mine, and you could have it like super budget too.
Oh man!
You take the case out of mine, you're practically at $100 computer.
$15 motherboard.
I will say, like,
I mean, I understand why it's $15.
Amazing. You can get a
like, dear Lord,
halfway decent quad core processor and RAM and motherboard for $100. I will say that is pretty cool.
Motherboard has USB 3 and
yeah,
I think it's M.2.
That's.
And you know, it's like those things, and it's really not a bad system. Like, it's definitely not. It's not a system that's only half as good, in a very pure benchmarked basis to, like, you know, James's Pentium, for example. I don't know about the i3, but
going by basic benchmarks, the 5350 is about 70 to 75% as fast as your i3.
Okay, yeah, you know, I mean,
for the value, if you compare the price of it. Yeah, value for money, I'm pretty much a winner here.
Well, but I mean, it's quad core versus dual core, so you know,
yeah.
single thread task. The Intel will be a lot better, but really, it's I think you screwed up on the storage. I don't, you know.
Yeah, but there's enough flexibility.
I think you should have gone. I think you should have gone slightly above 150 and done like an SSD or.
I set myself a target, like a harder target than what you guys had, and still pulled it off.
We shall see what the voters decide.
Yep, it's up to the community.
I
actually kind of want to play the system.
But I concur with George. I do think there's unanimous agreement that the most improved award almost certainly goes to James for successfully incorporating. I
really hope the next one's like a high budget gaming setup. These low budget ones are tough.
I'm going to lose miserably because I've got...
The community's never going to do it. The community's going to be like... The community's going to listen to this episode. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. They're going to listen to this episode. They're going to vote and agree that John wins this. And John's going to be very happy. But then everyone's going to be like, well, if we said 300 and that was such an easy challenge that John did 150. They're gonna be like, "What's the best computer you can build for $99?" And then John's gonna find a way to build it for like 15. He'll be like, "Oh look, Raspberry Pis are on sale."
If I went for a smaller hard drive and the slower quad core, I could get it under $100.
God,
that's still including the case and 8 gigs of RAM.
Listeners, community, please don't. Like, these budget ones are fun, but we need more variety. Like, we'll see what happens. We'll see. I'm curious as to where we go from here. But I think I like this challenge, if only just because, I think two of us went a very traditional route and built pretty similar things. Ultimately, we just decided where to invest the last $30-$40. And then, John, you went in a completely different route. But that's, like, to me, the beauty of this contest is that different perspectives, different ways of going about it. And, which one of these really fulfills the duty of being the best under $300? Like, that's actually kind of hard, because what does that mean? Maybe a something that only costs half that budget but is able to do most of the things is the better build for that particular challenge. So we'll see where the votes lie. But yeah, listeners, feel free to look for that. This podcast should be up relatively soon, and then I've been trying to make sure that those go up at the same time. And definitely vote for your favorite. And we'll see who's the winner. I was the winner last time. Will I continue my streak? I've won every single build challenge so far. Did you guys know that?
That's clutching at straws, something. Like, my word.
All right. So with that, we will end this section and transition into the last segment of Low Volume, and that is, of course, the freaking fantastic, fully favorite forum thread of the Fortnight. We just can't stop, won't stop. And the forum thread that we are going with this episode, in fact, there's some more context around this, but I'll let James and or John explain, because I haven't been following terribly closely. But this is the Dan A4-SFX, the smallest gaming case in the world. Thread on this, I think, originated on Hard Forum, and then there's an additional thread now on Small Form Factor Forum. It's been there for a while, I think since late October. And is it true that they're now trying to do Kickstarter for this?
Yeah. So people who aren't familiar with it, I would just suggest looking at the thread and the pictures. So basically, it's a 7.25 liter, I believe. So it's actually fairly. I mean, it's really small. I mean, that's like a full over 5 liters smaller than the M1, which is already pretty compact. And basically, the way it does it is that it has the motherboard and an SFX or even SFX-L power supply kind of parallel to each other, and then the video card is like kind of back to back with the motherboard using a really long PCIe extension. It's using the 3M extension, which is it's the best one you can get, which is also explains a lot of why it's so expensive as far as the case goes. But yeah, it's same. It's built by Lian Li, same as the M1, so kind of just really good build quality, aluminum, all that good stuff. And yeah, 7.25 liters. So like he says, it's basically the smallest case that you could fit a ITX motherboard and a full-size video card in. So yes, it's been in development for quite a while, and mostly because Dan, he's based in Germany, so he's got all sorts of German and EU regulations to go through. But it's finally going to production, I think, is not going to be till later this year, but Kickstarter will start in, I believe, 3 hours from now as of the recording. So yeah, and then I believe it's limited to 1,500 units. So for the Kickstarter, so I don't think he's gonna sell out right away. But if you're kind of worried about getting an order in, I would definitely try to get in on the Kickstarter sooner rather than later, because it's been a pretty popular project.
I'm trying to remember when I first stumbled on this. It was in hard form. This was actually even before small form factor form was a thing, I believe. But really, you know, it's a simple layout. It uses a PCI bridge very cleverly to sort of fold the GPU over. And near as I can tell, I mean, this is basically about as compact as you can get while supporting standard parts. Really, the only compromise, if you will, that's really, you know, where you could use that word for what this thing is trying to be, is that you have to stick with a relatively low profile CPU cooler. But even that's not much of a compromise anyway. You know, I don't have much to say other than, like, I think this is almost perfectly executed for what it is, and, you know, it's not really anything else you can get right now. And I wish him the best, and I'm confident that the Kickstarter is going to do just fine. There's been intense interest among a lot of folks surrounding this, and yeah, I mean, it's very reminiscent of the Ncase M1. I mean, that thing obviously supports a lot, you know, more diverse hardware and is a bit larger, and that's sort of the trade-off. But it's similar in terms of, like, you know, once you see it and you see how things are laid out and you think about it for a moment, it's sort of like, wow, that's kind of obvious. Why hasn't anyone else really approached things in this way before? Like, you know, all good design becomes sort of self-evident after the fact. But I'm just super excited and super happy that this is finally, like, a thing. Like, you know, people can now put money where their mouth is and try and get their hands on this. And so I'll definitely be staying tuned in and watching to see how well the Kickstarter goes. But it's an excellent product. He did a lot of really good work. Do we have anything else, sir?
No, I didn't really have much on this, and I'm actually trying to get the system under $100.
Oh my god!
I'm at
You're speccing for a challenge that doesn't exist yet.
I'm at 105.91.
Okay. All right. Well, in which case, I believe we are all set for this episode. So while we let John take on a challenge of somehow managing to get his cheap build even cheaper, dear Lord, I'd just like to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. I'd also like to thank both James, aka Aibohphobia, and Confusis, aka John Morrison, for joining me, Joshua Ramirez, aka PlayfulPhoenix, on this 9th episode of Low Volume. So, gentlemen, what will you be doing over the next 2 weeks? John?
I'm not at liberty to say.
Ah, confidential. I see. Well, fair enough. And how about you, James?
I need to finish that PE750 review. It's taken too long, so I'm gonna definitely my plan is to, for sure, get that done today.
I will hold you to that, sir.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for this review. I have decisions to make.
Other than that, really just waiting for Computex. I'm really excited to see what comes out. So hopefully more power supplies, more cases, more motherboards. So yeah, we'll be busy writing up news articles, hopefully.
So many articles. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you, listeners, for listening. Definitely look for those forum threads for the things we talked about, as well as for the small form factor build challenge. And until next time, see you.